Hello, warriors. Welcome to part two of our workshop on sustainable gifting. My name is Aster and I work at the sustainability office. And I'm joined with Maria.
Hi
Maria,
everyone.
Maria will be teaching us how to make cloth gift bags, which you can use to wrap your gifts for the holidays.
And they're
And
gonna look something like this.
and in this workshop, you'll need a shirt, a sewing needle, thread, pins, scissors, ruler, and a piece of yarn or a string. And yeah, without further ado, I'll pass it off to Maria.
Thanks, Aster. So we'll just get started. I'll just move my camera so you can see what I'm making. So I have a shirt and I used this shirt to already make kind of one bag. So I'm gonna use the same shirt to make a second bag just to save materials. But I decided to make a bag that was about like half the width of my shirt. So to do it, I cut kind of along the middle, and then I also cut the other way as well. So if you're starting with a new shirt, that's the kind of cut you do. Since I'm using the same shirt again, I just need to make like one more cut. So I want to cut through the both pieces of material for the shirt. So I'm gonna place my shirt, try to make sure that the fabric is placed like as well as possible, because I want to make as straight a cut as I can. And so depending on what kind of fabric you have, you can use a ruler to sort of either flatten out your fabric or sort of decide where to make your cut. With this fabric, it's nice because I sort of have some lines. So I'm just gonna start cutting slowly. Cut all the way to that other edge. And it's really nice to use a shirt because you can already have like one seam that's sewn. But I've heard that also using like an old pair of pants is nice because then you only need to sew kind of like one seam. So now that I have my rectangular piece of fabric, I'm gonna turn it inside out because it's always nice to have the nice side on the outside. So, and I'm gonna try to place it to line up the corners as well as I can. So this might take a little bit of time, but that's okay. The time you spend doing this now will make it easier to sew later. So, so now I'm gonna start pinning. So you see I have this nice finish on this one side. So I'm gonna leave that at the top because it will mean I won't have to hem the top after. But I'm gonna sew these two sides that are kind of open so that I have a bag with like three closed sides. And the closed side is already the side that's sewn from before. So I'm gonna pin this corner because I don't want this corner to move. And then I guess in the kits there are only 2 pins, although the more pins you have, like if you have any pins at home, you could pin like the whole side so that it doesn't move. But given we just have 2 pins, we'll sort of pin in this corner, and then I'll put a pin kind of along this short side, and then as I sew, I'm gonna move my pins to make sure that I'm still kind of sewing straight and the fabric isn't moving. So now I can take my thread, and so I'm gonna start by sewing the short side, and I'm gonna want my thread to be a bit more than like double the length of the short side, because it always takes more thread kind of than the length just because you're going in and out of your fabric. So and it's okay if your thread's not quite the right length because you can always cut it and then kind of continue sewing with some new thread. So that looks like a good length. So I'm gonna cut the thread, and I'm using white thread so you can see easier, but if you use kind of the same color thread as your fabric, then it won't, your stitches. I threaded my needle, I put the thread through the hole, and then I'm gonna tie the two loose ends together. I'm gonna double knot them. And this is just kind of a nice way to sew because it means you won't, your needle won't fall off your thread. So I'm gonna use my needle to try to get the knot as close to the end as possible. So now I have a double knot. So I'm gonna start in this corner, and I'm gonna put my thread through the fabric all the way through. And then I'm gonna come up again. And you may see I left a bit of thread kind of on the first side, on the top of the fabric, because I'm gonna go with my needle, I'm gonna go back through that loop and pull it tight. And that just means that the thread will like hold better and there's less chance that it will unravel after. So now I'm gonna go back through the fabric through the first hole I made. And then I'm gonna pull this taut. And I'm gonna go back up the second hole. And yeah, just kind of going back through your first stitch means that it's stronger. So now I'm just gonna start sewing. So I'm gonna use this kind of, I think it's called a runner stitch. I'm gonna do this whole short side. So I'm gonna go down and up and just continue like that. And now that I'm past this corner, I'm gonna move my pin a bit farther. And now I'm past this pin, so I can move it as well. And making cloth bags is kind of fun. It's nice. It's a nice craft for self-care, and also it saves a lot of waste because Christmas wrapping is one of those things that with the paper and the tape it generates a lot of waste. So it means that you have an easy way to wrap gifts. It's also kind of personal because you can use whatever fabric or old clothing you want to make these bags, and then you have less garbage at the end, which is nice. Yeah, and once you get to where your pin is or past it, you can take the pin out. Now I just have a little bit left to do. I'm gonna go all the way till the end. So now that I've reached the end, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put my needle through the fabric one last time and then come up kind of in the last, in the hole, kind of the last place I went down into the fabric. And then I'm not gonna pull it tight, I have a bit of a loop. So I'm gonna take my needle and go back through that loop. And then, pull the thread a bit so that that other loop closes, but I have a new loop that's open. And then I'm gonna go through that loop again, or through the new loop. And this is just a way to make sure that your sewing doesn't unravel. So then I can pull that tight. It gave me a nice knot. And then I'm gonna put my needle through that last stitch I made. And I'm just gonna pull it through so that kind of the head comes through. And then I'm gonna cut the thread right at the head. So I have 2 pieces of thread. And so then I'm gonna take these 2 pieces of thread. I want one piece to be on either side of that stitch so that I can tie a granny knot. So I'm gonna be careful to pull one string like the whole way through, and the other one I'm gonna keep on the other side. And then I'm gonna tie a double knot here, or a triple knot even. I just like to tie a lot of knots. The more knots you do, the more you can be sure that it's not gonna unravel. And then I have a bit of extra thread, so I'm gonna cut it a couple centimeters away from the knot. Now you can see I've sewed like one of the edges together. So now I'm gonna take my pins. I'm gonna pin the other side and I'm gonna sew all the way there. So and yeah, I'm gonna try to put the edges kind of one on top of the other. Okay, so now I'm ready to start sewing. So again, I'm gonna measure out my length of thread. So I want more than double this length. So like that looks to be a good length. I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna thread my needle again. And then I'm going to double knot the end of the thread. And I'm going to use my needle to try to get the knot as close to the end as possible again, because it's nice not to have 2 long tails, but if you do, it's okay, you can always cut it. So I'm going to start from the same corner again, start with the same thing of going through, coming up, and then going through the loop at the end and pulling it tight. Then I'm going to go through my first hole again, come up through my second or almost there. Then just going to keep sewing as I did before, all the way till this end. And if you have any questions while you're watching this video, you're welcome to send us a message at the Sustainability Office. We'd be happy to answer any of your questions. And you want to leave a bit of space between the edge of your fabric and your stitches, because that will just make it a bit stronger. If you sew too close to the edge of your fabric, your stitches might come out. And I'm going to put my first pin back in the fabric a little closer to the end. Now I can take this pin out because I've sewn that stitch, and I'll just put it in the very end to make sure the end is kind of flush. So once again, I'm going to use the same method for kind of tying it off. I do have this stitch here. I'm going to come back up through the fabric, trying to go through the same place I went through before. I can also take this pin out since it's kind of in my way. And so now I'm going to go through this stitch I made, like just put my needle right under the stitch, pull it through. Then I'm going to go through this loop I have here, pull the yarn, that loop closed, but keep this other loop sort of open, then put my needle through that loop, and then pull it tight. And now I have a nice knot. I'm going to take my needle, put it through that stitch again, but I won't pull it very far through. I'm going to cut the thread right at the needle head, and then I have 2 pieces of thread now, so I'm going to pull one through this stitch and keep the other on the other side, and I can tie a double knot or a triple knot. Oops. Okay, my second knot, I'm just gonna do a third one just to be safe. And now I'm gonna cut the thread a couple centimeters from the knot. So now now the sewing's done. The bag's pretty much done. I'm gonna turn it inside out and kind of pull the corners out. So here's my bag. And so now I can put something inside. Say if I were giving my pair of scissors to someone, I can put them inside, and then I can take my yarn or string and tie the top, tie a nice big bow on it, and there you have your Christmas bag. Thank you everyone for watching.